What if the people who smiled brightest on screen lived their loudest lives after the camera stopped? Old Hollywood sold elegance, discipline, and perfect manners. But behind closed doors, something else was happening. Glasses refilled, music turned up, and the rules quietly disappeared. Halfway through this list, you'll realize these weren't just parties. They were pressure valves for fame itself, and by the end, you may see classic Hollywood very differently than before. Number 12. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was marketed as sunshine in human form, bright smile, soft voice, effortless charm. But off-screen, her life moved at a pace that never slowed. Harlow loved gatherings that ran long, drifted late, and blurred into the next day. Studio insiders described her home as a place where laughter echoed past midnight, and guests never quite knew when to leave. This wasn't rebellion. It was momentum. Jean rose fast, worked nonstop, and found relief in noise and company. Parties were her way of breathing. Friends recalled music playing while conversations overlapped, people drifting in and out, and Jean always in the center, still glowing even when exhausted. The studio tried to keep her image clean, but they couldn't slow her life. Long hours, constant socializing, and little rest wore her down quietly. What makes her story haunting is how normal it felt at the time. Everyone assumed youth could outrun limits. Her gatherings weren't reckless. They were crowded, they were constant, and they never paused long enough for recovery. Jean Harlow didn't live loudly because she wanted to fall. She lived loudly because Hollywood never taught her how to stop. Number 11. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart mastered the art of looking tired and unbothered. That wasn't acting. Bogart loved long nights filled with cards, laughter, and drinks that kept coming. His idea of relaxing wasn't quiet. It was staying up until sunrise with the same familiar circle. His gatherings were rarely flashy. No grand decor, no formal invites, just regular faces, familiar jokes, and routines that repeated night after night. Poker tables stayed busy, conversations looped, sleep was optional. Bogart wasn't chasing chaos. He was maintaining rhythm. The problem was the rhythm never slowed. Filming during the day, hosting or attending gatherings after dark, then repeating the cycle again. What's fascinating is how well he balanced it publicly. He still showed up, still delivered lines, still looked composed. But behind that calm was a lifestyle that never truly paused. Bogart's parties weren't wild by spectacle. They were wild by endurance. And endurance, over time, always collects a price. Number 10. Dean Martin. Dean Martin made it all look easy. The laughs, the looseness, the casual charm. People assumed it was a performance. It wasn't. Dean genuinely loved gatherings that felt endless and effortless. His parties were warm, noisy, and relaxed. Music drifted through rooms, stories repeated. People stayed longer than planned. Dean floated through it all like nothing mattered tomorrow. What made his lifestyle different was how normal it felt to him. Late nights were routine. Socializing was oxygen. Silence felt unnecessary. While others burned out trying to keep up, Dean treated it like background noise. Hollywood rewarded that energy. It matched the era. But behind the smooth surface was constant motion. Rest rarely took priority. Reflection rarely interrupted momentum. Dean Martin didn't crash because he never stopped smiling, but the lifestyle demanded consistency. And consistency, even in pleasure, eventually weighs heavy. Number 9. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner didn't attend quiet gatherings. She changed the temperature of the room when she arrived. Her presence alone turned simple evenings into events. Voices rose. Emotions followed. Nothing stayed small for long. Her parties were intense, not planned. People showed up unannounced. Arguments sparked. Laughter followed. Everything lived at full volume. Ava thrived in that environment. Calm never suited her. Hollywood tried to frame her as glamorous, but friends knew the truth. She lived fast, because standing still felt unbearable. Her nights stretched long, not out of habit, but out of restlessness. What made Ava unforgettable wasn't just her beauty. It was how openly she lived. No hiding fatigue, no pretending balance. If the night demanded energy, she gave it. Her gatherings weren't escapes. They were expressions. And they reflected a woman who refused to live quietly in a world that constantly tried to manage her. Number 8. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich understood contrast better than anyone. Publicly, she was controlled and elegant. Privately, she curated gatherings that ignored convention completely. Her parties were selective and deliberate. Not everyone was invited. Conversations flowed late. Atmospheres shifted. Music, laughter, and intimacy filled spaces meant for quiet reflection. Marlene believed rules were optional after the lights dimmed. She hosted gatherings that allowed people to become versions of themselves Hollywood never permitted during daylight hours. What makes her story fascinating is how carefully she protected the divide. By morning, everything returned to perfection. No cracks, no gossip, just mystery. Dietrich didn't party to rebel. She partied to balance control with freedom. And she mastered both. Number 7. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra did not host quiet gatherings. Wherever he went, energy followed. His parties were loud, crowded, and powered by personality alone. Music played, voices clashed, stories grew bigger with every retelling. Sinatra didn't just attend social events, he became the event. People close to him said Frank hated emptiness. Silence felt wrong. He needed rooms filled with people, conversation, and motion. Friends, musicians, actors, and strangers all blended together. Boundaries blurred fast. What made Sinatra different was control. Even in chaos, he commanded the room. Laughter stopped when he spoke. Tension lifted when he smiled. He thrived on attention, but also fed others with it. These gatherings weren't just fun. They were part of his identity. A release from pressure. A reminder that he still mattered beyond the microphone. Frank lived as if slowing down meant disappearing. And in Hollywood, disappearing was the one thing he refused to allow. Number 6. Clark Gable. Clark Gable sold confidence on screen. Off-screen, he chased it through constant social motion. His gatherings were not wild in appearance, but they never ended early. Late dinners turned into long conversations. Long conversations turned into early mornings. Gable loved being surrounded by people. He listened more than he spoke. He observed. He relaxed in company. Isolation didn't suit him. Studios protected his image carefully, but insiders knew he rarely stayed home alone. He moved from one gathering to another, keeping his nights full and predictable. What's striking is how normal it all felt to him. No drama, no spectacle, just routine social endurance. A lifestyle built on staying awake and staying relevant. Gable didn't self-destruct. He slowly drained himself. And Hollywood, as always, applauded the appearance while ignoring the cost. Number 5. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead didn't respect volume limits. Her gatherings exploded with energy from the moment guests arrived. Laughter echoed. Conversations overlapped. Rules evaporated. She invited everyone and judged no one. Artists, actors, writers, outsiders. Her doors stayed open, and her nights stretched endlessly. Tallulah believed life should be lived fully or not at all. Quiet made her uncomfortable. Structure bored her. She thrived on unpredictability. What made her parties unforgettable wasn't excess. It was honesty. People felt free around her. Free to speak. Free to laugh loudly. Free to forget expectations. Hollywood didn't know what to do with someone like Tallulah. She couldn't be contained, and she didn't want to be. Number 4. John Barrymore. John Barrymore lived as if tomorrow was optional, negotiable, or simply not worth planning for. His gatherings were not organized events. They were collisions. People arrived expecting conversation, and left feeling like they had witnessed a performance they never asked for but could not escape. Barrymore dominated rooms without effort. He spoke loudly, laughed harder, and quoted literature with theatrical intensity, often repeating the same story again and again, each version more dramatic than the last. These nights stretched into daylight, not because anyone intended it, but because Barrymore could not stop once momentum began. Silence unsettled him. Stillness felt like failure. He thrived on motion, on attention, on the energy of an audience, even when the audience was exhausted. Friends said he was never escaping anything. That's what makes his story different. Barrymore wasn't running from pain or pressure. He was amplifying himself. Every gathering became a stage. Every guest became a witness. The problem was that performance never turned off. What makes his story tragic isn't the lifestyle itself. It's the absence of pause. No rest, no reset. Just repetition without recovery. Barrymore gave everything to the moment, again and again, until the moment finally took more than it gave. Number 3. Errol Flynn. If Errol Flynn arrived, the energy of the room shifted instantly. Conversations grew louder. Laughter spread faster. Boundaries quietly dissolved. His presence alone signaled that the gathering would not end gently. Flynn didn't enter rooms. He charged into them. He loved attention and chaos in equal measure. His gatherings were legendary, not because of planning, but because of escalation. Music played longer. Voices rose higher. Stories turned bolder with every hour. Everything moved forward, never sideways, never backward. Flynn lived without breaks. Each gathering pushed further than the last. Limits didn't interest him. Tomorrow felt distant and irrelevant. He treated life like a challenge to see how far energy could stretch before it snapped. What separates Flynn from others is how openly he lived this way. No disguises, no apologies. Hollywood smoothed the headlines, but insiders never forgot the intensity. They remembered the exhaustion that followed. Flynn didn't fear consequences. He feared boredom, and that fear drove him harder than fame ever could. Momentum became his identity, and once momentum disappears, the silence that follows is unforgiving. Number 2. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando did not gather people to impress them. He gathered people because being alone with his thoughts felt heavier than a crowded room. His nights were intense, emotional, and unpredictable. Conversations drifted from laughter into tension without warning. Nothing stayed light for long. Brando's gatherings often felt less like celebrations and more like pressure chambers. Guests recalled long conversations that stretched deep, sudden silence that felt deliberate, and then bursts of energy that pulled everyone back in. He demanded honesty from the room, even when people weren't ready to give it. Unlike others on this list, Brando wasn't chasing noise. He was chasing connection. Fame isolated him early, and gatherings became a way to feel real again. But that depth came with weight. His nights were draining, emotionally heavy. Never simple. Hollywood admired his talent, but quietly avoided his private world. There were no clear rules, no easy exits. Once you entered his orbit, you felt everything fully. Brando didn't burn out because he was careless. He burned because he lived without filters. And living that openly always comes at a cost. Number 1. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn didn't just enjoy wild gatherings. He built his identity around them. When Flynn hosted, unpredictability arrived immediately. Voices rose, laughter erupted, energy spiraled without warning. His gatherings ignored time completely. People arrived early and left at sunrise. Music never paused. Stories grew louder, bolder, and less restrained. Limits faded. Flynn thrived on that motion. Stillness bored him. Quiet felt like failure. What made him different was fearlessness. He didn't hide exhaustion. He didn't slow down. He treated life like a constant challenge to stay awake, stay bold, stay alive. Hollywood quietly covered the damage. Broken friendships, missed obligations, long recoveries. The legend survived longer than the man, but only just. Flynn didn't fall because of one moment. He wore himself down, piece by piece, and when the noise finally faded, there was nothing left to distract him from the silence he had avoided his entire life. So next time you watch those polished smiles and perfect performances, ask yourself what happened after the lights went out. These stars weren't just celebrating success. They were outrunning pressure, expectation, and loneliness. Which story surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments. If this changed how you see classic Hollywood, hit subscribe and share it with someone who loves film history. Because sometimes the real drama never made it on screen.